Jeff, you brought it up last night. You said we're going to talk about the elderly benefits that are out there for Canadians. Let's just call it that, I guess. But you got old age security in Canada, and this is different from pension plans. This is different from your your Canadian pension plan, contributions or whatever pension you might have with your job. This is like the end of the road. This is when you just can't make it for yourself. They give you this, right? Am I getting that wrong? Isn't that how it was supposed to be laid out?
In terms of the OAS, well, okay, so the thing is that out of 23 OECD countries that were examined by the Fraser Institute in a report they published in 2022, 16 of them have already raised the age of eligibility for OAS. Canada is one of the outliers. We maintain it at 65, and you can get CPP at 60. And, that potentially leads to 25, 30 years worth of benefits. Whereas when these programs were first put in place, they were set at the age of life expectancy. So, and other countries, actually other OECD countries, some have just raised the age, and a few of them have actually indexed it to life expectancy. So we have like this massive, basically deficit. Unfunded liabilities is what we're talking about when we're talking about like social programs. We have these massive unfunded liabilities because the boomer generation is retiring. And this is like the issue of our era, really, is the issue that we have the largest generation among us, the boomer generation, going into retirement. And they're cashing out these benefits for decades worth of retirement, which, they were never set up to do. There has been some restructuring over the years, but it still is the case that these programs depend on things like GDP growth and population growth in particular. Now, in 2012, the Harper government reformed the plan to like OAS and I think CPP as well, to raise the age of eligibility to 67. And then, he got tossed out of office, and Trudeau, repealed that. And so
isn't that a whole like talking point that the Liberals have, that yes, if you vote for the Conservatives, they'll put the age eligibility for pension plan up a few years. That's the big scare, right?
Yeah, it is the big scare, but it's what the countries that are not going bankrupt are doing. They're raising the retirement age because it's just not a feasible plan. And the Fraser Institute has a pretty good critique on the Canada pension plan, even. So it's not just OAS. A lot of people are talking about OAS, but the Canada pension plan has about $1 trillion in unfunded liabilities. When you use like the actual value of their liabilities, what they do with the Canada pension plan is they use projected values, and those projected values assume a constant population growth. So the alternative to raising the retirement age to 67 was mass immigration, and that's really like that's what the demand is all about. Is they have to bring in like 500,000 people a year just to keep these retirement plans solvent for the boomer generation in particular.
Okay, let's circle back to all of that, because let's start with the preface. Let's start with why did we think in the first place that this is what we needed? So we live in what we all thought was a free country. This is the idea. We all live, I grew up with the whole, like, somebody tells you what to do. You say, "You tell me what to do. It's a free country," right? And we slowly eroded our way away from this idea of like what a free country is. What does a free country mean? Liberty is the idea that you not only have freedoms to do things, but you also have the responsibility to take care of yourself. And this is something that's been, let's just say we've been moving away from that for a very long time. In the United States, they're dealing with that. It started with the New Deal under, who's that, FDR? And the New Deal came with all of these new things where it was like guarantees for things that were never guarded under the Constitution. These are entitlements that were brought forward, and Canada kind of followed suit, as well as a lot of the other countries that you're naming in the OECD. So we came with these new social programs, the social safety net, as some people call it. And this is the idea that, well, those poor elderly, what happens if we have another Great Depression and all this stuff, right? And we got to take care of them because, life expectancy is about 65 years old. And what if they live beyond those years? They're not going to be expected to work until the day that they die, are they? And, these are all the thoughts. These are nice thoughts that came from people that had no other giant responsibilities like this at the time. So they brought about these social programs, and which ended up becoming these entitlements. And as you alluded to, the age expectancy does not match where the life expectancy is today.
Yeah,
we live much longer, but people are able to retire at such an early age relative to that. And that comes with a lot of problems. And a lot of economists have been saying for many, many years that, well, as the expectancy, age, or, life expectancy goes up, so should the retirement age. These are unfunded liabilities. If you want to retire early, you could do that on your own dime. Have at her. Congratulations. I'm glad you did well in your life. But apart from that, it's like, well, we can't run what I like to call a Ponzi scheme at the end of the day.
It is. It is, and functionally speaking, like it's enslaving the unborn. We hand a bill to Canadians for being born nowadays. In terms of these unfunded liabilities, younger generations are not going to get anywhere near the return on their contributions. And another thing that they depend on is like an inflation rate of about 2.1%. So, how much can we depend on these factors for younger generations? Now, they say that they're able to cover these unfunded liabilities out until like 2070 or something like that. But again, it depends on these
that date keeps moving, though, Jeff. It keeps moving. I remember as a teenager hearing that the date was going to be in the 2010s. And it keeps going out further and further where the unfunded liability point is. And let's just face it, we had a drunken sailor in Parliament for 10 years, and he did what drunken sailors do, and he spent all the money, even money that we don't have today. So at what point does it kind of rein in? And like I said, we've seen this coming for a very long time. They knew that the baby boomer generation will be retiring, and that when that comes about, we're going to hit a fiscal wall. It's just going to be unbelievably unsustainable. We won't be able to pay the bills. But now we're seeing that, but we're seeing record numbers of spending money. Like, it's just unbelievable. There's the amount that they still continue to spend.
It's theft. I mean, they are enslaving the younger generations. It's outrageous what's happening. The younger people like Gen Z, Generation Screwed, they're going to spend their entire lives just working to pay for the boomers' retirements. Functionally speaking, like, they're never going to own property. They're barely going to be able to afford rent. They're going to have to share housing or live with their parents, and just work for nothing. They're never going to be able to accumulate wealth because all of that wealth has been transferred to the boomer generation. Functionally speaking.
There's a similar situation happening in China right now, because people just can't get off their feet. Young men are in a situation culturally, you can't have a girlfriend unless you have a piece of property. So people are buying condos in like ghost towns that banksters are making lots of money on, because they're building these condos for pennies on the dollar, and then they're charging people to own it just so that they have a deed so they could get a girlfriend. And then on top of that, they can't even live in the towns that they live in, or they can't afford to, and they live there and have to work there. And there's a phenomena that's come about, and it's called the lie flat movement. I don't know if you've heard of this, where young people are just checking out, and they're saying, you know what? I'm not gonna do all of that stuff. I'm not gonna bust my ass. I'm
No.
just gonna lie flat. I'm just gonna lay down and do nothing. How about that? And now they're becoming a draw on the system. And in fact, there was like YouTube videos of people talking about this concept. China has banned everything from the internet discussing this concept. But it's a cultural thing that you'll run into. It doesn't matter what country you're from. If you do this to a people, the economic incentives will send you in a direction where, for lack of a better word, productivity's at zero. I'm getting this from the chat right now. Productivity zero, and
Yes.
that's almost the end. I know it's not a goal, but we all know, at least the people who pay attention to, the philosophy on this side of the aisle, is that when you introduce socialism, it 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 ends up eating itself in the end. And if you have a little bit, it just takes longer. If you have a lot, it's just quicker. It's just a degree of how much socialism you bring in, not if you do or don't. It's when you do, it's gonna end bad. It just may take a while, and
Yeah.
that's where we're at. It's kind of like that, and I can't help but feel bad for boomers as well that have been sold a lie.
I don't know. I have a hard time feeling bad for them. It seems like they're making off like bandits.
Thanks for watching. If you want to see more clips like that, make sure you're subscribed to the channel. The link is right here. If you want to see it live as it happens, make sure you subscribe to the Clyde Do Something YouTube channel. The link is right there. We'll see you in the next one.